Cuktech sent me this big battery bank for review. It can charge 3 devices at the same time without having to reset other ports and disconnect other devices. It is even powering my 12-volt TV. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. Of course, it's not just limited to charging phones or laptops. There's so much more I can do with it. In this in-depth review, you can also see my detailed analysis of its charging efficiency, as well as how to power other non-USB devices like a mesh network router, HDMI switcher using this power bank. It comes with a USB Type-C to USB Type-C cable and a carrying pouch. Here's a quick design overview. It has one physical button to change the different display information or turn the screen off. It has 3 USB ports, 2 USB Type-C, and 1 USB-A. The USB Type-C 1 in blue is a bidirectional port, which means it can be used for charging the device or recharge the battery bank itself. With a second press, you can see the charging graph over time. LED indicator animation. The battery capacity is printed here, 210 watts maximum combined output from these 3 ports. It is also airline safe. It is lower than 100 watt hour, so you can bring this one on board. The 88 watt hour is the rated capacity. 90 watt hour is the typical capacity, which is slightly higher than the rated one. In my first test, I made sure my battery bank is fully charged and the MacBook Pro 14-inch is fully discharged, so I can calculate its conversion rate or charging efficiency. This time lapse is recorded using a GoPro. Its screen is off most of the time, but I did come back and press the button to check its battery status after about an hour. Using the USB-C to USB-C connection, my MacBook can take in a maximum of 100 watts input. The charging output drops as the battery gets fuller. It took about 1.5 hours to bring the laptop from 0% to 97%. Here's my analysis. The Cuktech has a 90 watt hour battery capacity. The laptop has a 69.6 watt hour built-in battery, which gained 97% in the charging test. Divided by 90 watt hour, I'm getting 75% conversion rate. This is an excellent result. Not only it matches its specification, but also is one of the best I've tested so far at a much lower cost. It can take in a maximum of 110 watts of charging power. I'm using a 100 watt charger in this test as it's more common. Since its screen is off most of the time, I connected a power meter so I can monitor the charging status. It's able to sustain above 93 watts of input power. I did come back and press the button to check the charging status. At 51%, the charging power is around 52 watts. Just like the laptop, as the battery gets fuller, the charging speed may decrease. It took about 2 hours to fully recharge the battery bank. It took more than 10 minutes to charge the last 2%, but at that point, it's pretty much trickle charging, around 2 watts. Maximum charging speed test using the original Apple charger 140 watts USB-C to MagSafe connection. Maximum CPU load running a browser performance test. I'm getting 143 watts right now. Now switching to the Anchor USB Type-C 1 output. And this one will max out at around 100 watts. 85 watts, 94.4 watts max. 72 watt hour capacity. A bit smaller and a bit slower than this one. I believe it will hit 140 watts as well. This is from Cuktech 20, 132 watts. Run again. That test just ended. Depending on the CPU load or the overall laptop performance or power consumption will be limited. 141 watts per second. It's a little bit under 140 watts, 139. It can charge 3 devices at the same time. I have a MacBook Pro 16-inch, a 14-inch Chromebook, and a tablet. Their power consumption is displayed on the screen, mapped to USB Type-C 1, 80 watts, the white cable to the MacBook. The second one, USB Type-C 2, 31 watts, and USB Type-A, 11.9 watts. Very detailed information. The total power output is 123 watts right now. It is lower than the rated 210 watts because the device does not require so much power. The USB Type-C port 1 is rated at 140 watts maximum. And let's verify that. I disconnected all these other devices, keeping just the MacBook Pro, and I will have to run a very CPU intensive program in order for this one to reach over 100 watts. Check it out. Currently, it is 80.25 watts. If I run the program to test the browser performance, and the power consumption of the MacBook will increase. The maximum using the USB Type-C to the MagSafe connector is going to be rated at 140 watts. And it's still not reaching that because the laptop does not require so much power at the moment. The second USB Type-C port here is maxed out at 45 watts connecting to the same laptop. 44.7, 45 watts. It's possible to charge much smaller electronics like earbuds or Apple Watch. But here is the tip. When you are charging those small electronics, you might want to double click on this button to make the circle appear around the lightning symbol. So it will enter the low power mode and it will not turn off automatically. In the normal mode, when it detects such a low power consumption, like around 2 watts, it may think the laptop is almost fully charged and it will cut off by itself, therefore saving power. But in the low power mode, it will be able to sustain this kind of like 2-3 watts of power output to those small electronics to make sure they are fully charged. And I can still use the most powerful USB Type-C 1 port to charge the laptop at 100 watts when the small electronics like earbuds and Apple Watch are connected. Its USB Type-C 1 port in blue is a bidirectional port, which means I can use it and charge it at the same time. It can be used as a port to recharge itself. I have a maximum 100 watts charger connected and it's gonna hit 100 watts. It's not 100% efficient, therefore I'm seeing USB Type-C at 93.3 watts. Now I'm gonna connect my MacBook Pro to this USB Type-C 2 port, and I believe I'll get around 45 watts. It's also possible to use the third port, USB-A, to charge another device. If I click this button, it shows the total input, charging speed, and the graph. It's pretty consistent. 47 minutes remaining to fully recharge. Since it's power delivery 3.1 compatible, it can automatically switch between 5, 9, 12, and 20 volts. With the matching power delivery trigger cable, it can be used to power any electronics within that voltage range. In this case, my 24-inch TV runs on 12 volts DC power. Therefore, it can be powered by this battery bank without any issue. The display says at 77%, it will give me 4 hours and 38 minutes of runtime. The most interesting application for me is that it powers my Blackmagic ATEM Mini, creating a wireless live stream setup, taking full advantage of this powerful HDMI switcher that takes in 12 volts. This is our DIY PD trigger cable with a female USB-C adapter. It consumes 9.5 watts. Well, the same cable can also be used on my mesh network router that extends my internet range. It can be used to provide Ethernet wired connection to the laptop or the Blackmagic Atom Mini. It consumes about 5 watts of power. There's one more port left. The USB-A port can be used to charge my tablet. Now it's powering my router, TV, and a tablet. I converted a 18-year-old Apple Hi-Fi speakers to use a 9-volt USB-C input instead of 4D batteries. It works perfectly on this battery bank. It consumes about 8 to 9 watts. It is the largest one I've tested so far with a higher output than the Anker one, and it cost 40% less.